Na, hoztam egy kis banánt is. Hehe. Na. Hehe. Sziasztok! Te. Na, Diablo 4. Urgent.
Diablo 4
Urgent.
just responded about key beta questions. Pets
Beta
after
news
launch, will that
update.
be a thing? Drop rate changes for the open beta. World boss schedule will differ in the full version of the game. Can you even sync story progression in co-op? And so much more. There are a ton of questions answered here from the dev team. Also, we're going to be talking about some advice when it comes to accidentally skipping a legendary drop and not picking it up, especially in dungeons. How do you retrieve it? And a big warning about having big parts of the story spoiled because of menu
Nem veszi föl, nem veszi
options
föl,
of
vagy nem
beta.
is
You
értem.
want to avoid these menus to keep the game completely spoiler free. And if you missed it, I did a recent video about the 6th class leak, some really cool stuff there, plus a ton of official news in that video as well from Blizzard, so check it out on the channel. All right, so we're going to start right here with a critical update about the beta. It says expectations for the Diablo 4 open beta. This comes from the community manager of Diablo 4, and at first he thanks us for participating in the beta and that it is really going to be helping with the launch. But let's get into the really important stuff right here. With your help, learned a lot. Let's get for participating in the beta.
This information again, ensuring that your experience at launch is as smooth as it can be.
Beta, and that it is really going to be helping with the launch. But let's get into the really important stuff right here. It says, with your help, we learned a lot during our early access beta weekend. We intend to learn a lot more this weekend during our open beta. And we want to talk to you all about what you can expect and how your participation directly impacts Diablo 4's development. All right, queue times. Oh boy. So it says, when we open the gates again this Friday to absolutely everyone, we are expecting a lot of people. There will be lengthy queue times, particularly on Friday when we first launch and during peak regional windows. This past weekend,
Tehát when we open the gates again at this Friday to absolutely everyone, we are expecting a lot of people. Nyilván, igen. There will be lengthy queue times, particularly on Friday when we first launch and during peak regional windows. De ember, hogyha tudjátok, hogy nagyon sok emberre számítanak, akkor miért nem készülnek úgy? Hogy azért kellenek a queue-k, hogy properly stress teszteljenek.
help us to forecast the capacity we expect this weekend, and we'll be using that capacity to intentionally stress our systems in preparation for launch. In summary, while we know it can be frustrating, we need to do queues to properly stress test our services, and we are designing to ensure we have them some of the time. So, yes, expect problems. Maybe, I don't know if we're going to have more problems this weekend since there's going to be so many more people. They're really trying to test their preparedness weekend over weekend. And of course, this is going to be the ultimate test for launch. Let's see how it goes. Now, next up, it says this, maintenance. As we monitor the population or encounter in-game issues to address, there may be times when we will take the game offline temporarily to deploy infrastructure adjustments or fixes. That's going to be a bummer if they're going to be taking it offline.
Tehát akkor offline viszik a játékot. Tehát offline viszik a játékot, csak úgy, mármint hogy, tehát, hogy javítsanak dolgokat a 3 napos béta alatt, aztán aki mondja 5 perc, vagy 50 perc után, 50 perces várakozás után, és lehet, hogy keveset mondom bejut, vagy 10 perc után offline viszik, majd várhat megint egy 3 órát, azt igazából ennyit tudott játszani. Miért nem? Tehát... Nem tudom. Biztos én vagyok a hülye, és nem értek hozzá. Tehát, hogy nem az lenne a lényeg, hogy... Nem tudom. Nem az lenne... Most gondolkodok. Amint A Dark and Darker jutott eszembe, hogy ott ugye alfa a játék, de vagy, tehát nem is tudom, mekkora volt a peak Dark and Darkerben. Nekem az egész, nem azt meg, tehát hogy ez egész izéset mutasd. Miért nem lehet megnézni? Mi ez a szar? Mi ez a szar Steam DB, basz meg, mi ez a szar? Ja, mert Dark and Darker demo volt. Nem? Ah, nem bírom, nem lehet megnézni, mert ez egy szar. Na mindegy, ott is volt. Tehát, hogy alfa játékban több százezren voltak, és meg tudták oldani Q. Ja, ez a játék nagyon szar, Conti, itt nézd meg a grafikát, meg nézd meg nézd meg Conti, itt sokkal Jó, húzz a picsába.
For fixes. Now that's gonna be a bummer if they're gonna be taking it offline during actual beta times. I hope if they do take it offline, they consider extending the beta. Furthermore, they say this right
Hogy
here.
extending the beta. Aha,
De jó.
Hétközben majd biztos sokan tudnak játszani, akik beta tesztelnek ingyen a Blizzardnak.
For the first time, we want to hear from you. The team will be monitoring the forums where they are dedicated sections for bug reporting and technical support for PC and console. So yeah, just give your feedback. They go on.
We can't thank you enough. Hát csak kiadjuk a játékot 100 euróért, és akkor 4 nappal előbb tudtok játszani, ha nagyon sok pénzt fizettek.
Thank you all. And of course, this is Act 1 only, and there's a lot more to this game.
Ja, igen, és a többi játékainkba adunk nektek dolgokat, amiket ugyanúgy megvehettek 80 euróért.
But yeah, let's get into more questions from the community and answers from the dev team. So check this out right here. Are characters from early access beta carrying over to this weekend, asks Catherine. And we have a reply from Adam Fletcher, community manager of Diablo 4, who says, yep. So yeah, that's good news. So you can have a sigh of relief if you want to continue your barbarian.
Ez a játék sokkal bonyolultabb annál, Conti.
Furthermore, we have this one from Unknown Fowl, who says, can you guys please confirm if drop rates are increased for the beta? It takes a simple yes or no and alleviates some concerns people have. So, get this. This is actually an interesting response from the dev team. Rod Ferguson says, they are tuned higher, yes, to give a fuller experience. And better test during the beta. So we should be seeing some more significant drops in this beta period. Will that stay the same during launch or be pulled back? That's gonna come back to...
Persze, föl lett tolva a drop rate, gyerekek, hogy mindenki full legendary gearbe legyen, és mindenki ki tudja verni hétközben.
Will story quest progress be saved for all players in a group? Currently, only the party host got the progress saved while the others still had to redo everything. The other got the completion rewards but still had to do the quests themselves. Yeah, that's kind of a bummer, and it makes it somewhat difficult to really keep on the same page. Now, the confirmation is this. Players got to be on the exact same quest and point to sync. So you have to be basically all caught up in your, I suppose you would say, in your single player
Igen, és akkor majd utána is följebb húzzák a dropot, mindenki full legendary-ba. Ja, de a legendary nem a legjobb, de legendary az nagyon jó. A legendary-nál van jobb utána akkor, de nem esik Primeval Legendary 4. Mint értem, hogy följebb van húzva kicsit, de...
Which everyone will receive.
Milyen teszt ez egyáltalán, hogy...
Into the response about this one right here. Does the dog grow up and join us in combat? Rod Ferguson says,
jó válasz egyébként az, hogy igazából ők nem teszteltek semmit.
But wait, there's more to this story. So we have another question kind of related to pets. So check it out right here. Aldo says, hey Rod, are we going to have pets in game like Diablo 3? maybe you mentioned it somewhere, maybe I missed it. And get this, this is the response from Rod Ferguson, who goes on to say, not at launch. So that is not a firm no whatsoever. So I'm thinking
Tudom, hogy sokba
maybe, just
kerül.
maybe,
Akkor
they
kérnek
are
érte
thinking
többet, de
ahead
legyen
here,
még jobb.
and we will see pets eventually in Diablo 4, which would be really, really cool. I hope they actually consider doing
Hát
that.
amúgy
That
alapvetően
would
nem
be
lenne baj,
so
hogyha
cool. And also have
drága egy
pets
játék, hogyha így
customized or something like
jó.
that with armor. Man, so much
Képzeld
potential.
el.
Furthermore, we have Ian who says, I
De
know we are
általában
not
azért, mert
keeping our
drága egy
favorite
játék,
characters. What about
drága
plans
játék
created
nem jobb.
during the beta? Great question. That's actually a feature I didn't get to
Toltam,
test out.
igen.
Now, Rod Ferguson says, no, sorry, full wipe with exception of unlocked rewards. So at least you get to keep your
Vissza kell
rewards.
tekerni,
But
mert
for
próbálok
no
tekerni, figyelni.
whatsoever.
Amúgy okés volt a játék. Én egy olyan, a beta alapján én is egy olyan 6-ost adnék max rá. Csak hát 70 euró. Szóval, hogyha egy ilyen játékot akar játszani az ember mondjuk megfizethető áron, akkor van a jobb alternatíva. De hogyha minden áron ezt akar játszani az ember, akkor hát 70 euró. Azért annyira azért nem jó. De hát én is fogom játszani, mert én is hülye vagyok. Ja.
So I'm thinking maybe, just maybe they are.
Azt mondom, hogy most ki lehet próbálni. Várni kell egy 12 órát, amire sikerül elindulni a játéknak. De mindenképpen, hogyha valaki hát ki akarja próbálni, akkor most a jobb alternatíva. Hát a Last Approach például, meg a Poe. Azok most biztosan jobban.
We will see pets eventually in Diablo 4,
Szerintem.
which would be really, really cool. I hope they actually consider doing that. That would be so cool. And also have pets that you can customize or something like that with armor. Man, so much potential there. Furthermore, we have
Az ERPG vonalon,
says, I know
a mostani kicsit MMO-s vonalon meg biztos tud más is mondani olyat, ami... Jó, azt nem tudom, hogy jobb, de hogy tudnak mondani biztosan.
we are not keeping our beta characters. What about clans created during the beta? Great question. That's actually a feature I didn't get to test out. Now, Rod Ferguson says no. Sorry, full wipe with exception of unlocked.
Nem jól visszatekertem, csak nem
Maybe you
figyeltem.
mentioned it somewhere. Maybe. What about clans? I know we are not keeping our beta characters.
Akkor igazából
What
az
about
mindegy.
clans? You get to keep your rewards, but the clan will have to be
Az a
recreated.
baj, elmondtam, és nem tudom úgy visszamondani. De szerintem nagyon drága a játék, már hogy azért, amit adott az a béta, azért nagyon drága a játék. Valószínűleg jobb lesz, amikor kijön a játék, de szerintem még egy év, mire a játék olyan szinten lesz, mint amennyit ér, legalább. De ez csak spekuláció. Meg ez csak az én véleményem. Valakinek bőven megér ez ennyit.
Is based on the game's latest state or an older version without going into too much detail. Would love to hear some little info. Thanks. And the response from Rod says this: older version. So right now.
Jó, hát most miért mondaná azt, hogy ez a mostani verziója a játéknak? Nyilván nem fogja azt mondani.
Would love to hear some little info.
Igazából tök mindegy, mit mond.
And the response from Rod says
Mennyivel
this:
régebbi.
older version. So right now, what we will be playing in this beta is actually considered an outdated version as to what the team has internally. People trying to download that patch and the beta. So yeah. All right, so some really key information here about if you miss out on a legendary in a dungeon, where does it go? So basically, it goes to your stash according to this. It says if you miss a legendary in a dungeon, it gets sent to your stash. I noticed a cool feature over the weekend, a legendary I had dropped and yet to pick up in my dungeon was sent to my stash. I was playing a dungeon with some friends and we were split up, completing the objectives. I looked on my map and I had a legendary star quite far away from my current location. I teleported back to town and then used my friend's portal to quickly get to the location in the dungeon where the star was showing. When I got back into the dungeon, the legendary was gone and the star no longer appeared. I thought this was
legendary was gone.
The game would despawn any legendary items on the ground. Rare and magic items were still scattered throughout the map when I returned, but didn't think much of it after that. Well, after the dungeon, I went to my stash to deposit a few other items I had found, and lo and behold, I had a new legendary stash.
És benne volt a stash-ébe.
Saying I had missed it. So I don't know. I haven't really tracked this myself, or have this happen to me yet, but I'm hoping the game kind of notifies you, hey, there's a new legendary in your stash right
De
when you enter
miért?
town, because that seems to be extremely important. But yeah, he goes on to say this right here, this is a neat feature which might make, splitting up and doing dungeon runs a bit quicker, since you won't have to worry about backtracking to pick up your legendary items. We know there's enough of that.
Miért nem csinálják meg csak simán jóra? Miért nem csinálják meg csak simán jóra? Mi lesz a következő, hogy csak olyan item esik, ami neked jó, vagy, tehát, és azt se kell fölvenni, és azt se kell rárakni a karakteredet, sőt, utána meg már Mi ez vazzak?
Diablo 3, when your group was split up and speeding through rifts, there were many times when a player would have to teleport or run across the map to pick up loot. So yeah, this is a neat little feature. I definitely recommend for now, especially during the open beta period, to check your stash quite often, just in case you did accidentally miss a legendary, especially if you are playing cooperative play, because I'm thinking that this might happen and be more commonplace in co-op for some reason. Also, we gotta talk about story spoilers. Yes, you can accidentally spoil major parts of the story by going into one of the menus, so check it out. It says, be careful and don't get spoiled in the open beta. Don't read too much stuff in the achievements tab. There are huge story spoilers there. I got spoiled, so you don't enjoy the weekend. Ah, man, I hate when things get spoiled like that. I remember going into a movie, checking my Twitter real quickly, scrolling down, boom, the movie that I was about to see.
De mi a faszomnak nézegeted a Twitteredet a film előtte, barom? Elnézést kívánok. Elnézést kívánok. Elnézést. Elnézést kívánok. Mondjuk voltak, akik azt mondták, hogy a Diablo 4-nek a sztoria az ilyen 1000-szer jobb, mint az előző Diablóknak, meg hogy annyira jó a sztoria a béta alapján már, hogy el se hiszik, hogy úristen.
This is it, new beta update, 6th class leak. And in-game leaks, which a lot of you guys might have missed the leaks about those. It's interesting because we could be getting the Paladin in the future, which would be really, really cool.
Jó, de itt egyáltalán, nem tudom.
Holy Warrior, Holy Knight. Man, that would be cool if they added Holy Warriors into the game.
Nem mondanám azt, hogy ez a sztori annyira kiemelkedő lenne.
Eric goes on to say this.
A játék nagy része amúgy is ilyen hack and slash.
Vagy
nagy része, az egész játék az. Most az, hogy a sztori ráadásul tele van unnecessary cutscene-ekkel, állandóan megtöri a játékmenetet, eddig volt. Meglepődnék amúgy, hogy azok, akiket nagyon érdekel, vagy azokat, hogy mondod ezt? Azokat, akiket nem teljesen csak a sztori érdekel, szerintem azok biztos, hogy elkattintanak legalább 5-10-szer ezekből a cutscene-ekből, minimum.
Highly unlikely there will be an Amazon added, as it's more likely they changed it into the Rogue. Interesting. Of their own admission, the Rogue is a hybrid Amazon assassin. Given the artwork showing a paladin wielding a spear, they may take the Amazon spear skills and move them to a paladin, a bit like the Diablo 3 Merc. Interesting theory. I think you could be onto something there. That would actually be cool. I think that would work. Although I will admit the sound of the Amazon type character sounds very intriguing to me still. Perhaps they could somehow pull it off and make them unique enough. Now, Neuro says the following right here. Imagine a nightmare sigil that turns an ordinary dungeon.
Imagine a nightmare sigil.
Visually generated multi-level dungeon.
Never-ending procedurally generated multi-level dungeon.
Get increases as well. That could be cool. Hell yes, dude. I'm loving the sound of that. I wish you were on the dev team giving them these ideas. I don't know the technical limitations of this.
Amúgy jó ez a videó, meg informatív minden, de kicsit ilyen overly hyped az emberünk, úgy adja elő. De én ezt nem hiszem el, hogy valaki ezért van.
They don't want you to be kind of like in one dungeon all the time. They want you to be in the overworld, I guess we call it, exploring, taking on side activities, being hunted down by the butcher, going after world bosses, going into different zones, experiencing, the side quests, and then running into those dungeons along the way. That's kind of, it sounds like what they want from this game. Now, Chicken Wings says, would love it if Blizzard developed an API for the game and let the community do a lot of the heavy lifting for creating useful quality of life features like loot filters, moving stuff to and from the stash, saving loadouts, etc. Can you imagine if they had like an offline button where you can click offline and then they're like, we're doing major mod tools for the community. Can you imagine the life that would breathe into
nem
this
lesz
game? Of
soha.
course, they want to do their own thing with
Tehát ilyen nem lesz soha, bassz meg.
DLC and expansions and things like that. But a lot of the most successful games really live on the modding community.
Igen, ez is igaz. Bármit, amit modoltak a Blizzardnál, az kurva jó lett. Nem bármit. A legjobb játékok nagy része modolt Diablo modolt Blizzard játék, csak hát ugye a Blizzardnak a fasza ki lett azzal, hogy nem kapnak ebből milliókat, úgyhogy szétbasztak mindent, amit lehetett. Mondjuk az, hogy nincs loot filter a játékban, az borzalmas, az nevetségesen szar. Ugye, hol volt ez? Nem ez?
Alright, so here we go. We got some.
Amúgy nézhetjük azt is.
Alright, so here we go. We got some brand new announcements about the Diablo 4 open beta right before it launches. You're going to want to definitely update.
Ja, biztos lesz loot filter.
And more explanation about drop rates, plus new responses from the dev team about a spell intensity has been scrapped from the game. Well, I got very good news about that one. And also, we get further insights as to how exactly this works. Which is really cool. And whatever happened to attribute point allocation, and will the inventory system ever improve? And if you've struggled with a Shiva, the world boss, in the past, well, there's some fantastic tips on how to take her down very quickly. Also, check it out right here. The Open World Games t-shirt store is now live with some absolutely incredible designs that I can comment down below. So yeah, this is super important right here. Diablo 4 Open Beta Game Ready driver released. Our latest GeForce Game Ready driver gets your system ready for Diablo 4's DLSS 2 Enhanced Open Beta, which begins March 24th. So yeah, this driver seems to be designed around Diablo or open beta experience, but also does have some other cool tidbits in there as well for Cyberpunk 2077's ray tracing overdrive mode and a few other things going on as well for The Last of Us Part 1's launch and a bunch of other cool stuff for Resident Evil 4. So yes, definitely get the driver.
Biztos ne.
Going to enhance your experience for sure.
Enhance persze. Szétbasz mindent, biztos ne tőzsd le.
Also, a note about the Battle.net client. Yes, restart your Battle.net client before the beta starts. You may need to restart your Battle.net client when the beta starts.
Az Essék Ferinc kérdezte, hagyján, hogy a játékot ne indítsd el, de ahogy nézem még a... Jó, ez kis pók. Hogy még a Battle.net Ranchert is újra kell indítani.
Or saying that, you know, the servers aren't available, make sure you restart your Battle.net client for sure. Now, also, another note here that, yes, this is going to be most likely a rough ride going into this beta. So remember, this is another reminder from Rod Ferguson saying that, yes, expect queues, maybe even very long queues, especially on the first day of this beta. And if that is the case, I think Blizzard needs to extend this beta. And also remember that the drop rates for this beta are going to be...
Azért, mert extendelik a bétát, attól nem lesz jó a béta, bazd meg. Attól lenne jó, hogyha tehát ezeket a problémákat meg tudnak oldani, anélkül, hogy probléma lenne. Amint... Nem is... Tehát... Nem gondolkodom. Tehát, hogy értem én... Hol volt? Tehát értem én, hogy bazd meg, nagyon sok pénzre számítanak, és inkább most derüljenek ki a problémák, mint amikor kijön a játék. De hát, hogyha tudják, mire számítsanak, már volt ilyen, már ezerszer jó, nem ezerszer, de már nagyon sok ilyen szituáció benne voltak. Nyugi.
Check this out right here. Says this was just common sense. I said this to everyone I've been playing with that. It isn't going to be this generous in the full release. Anyone who has played any Diablo in the past will know that you aren't getting rates like this without high magic find. Yeah, only
ez az
right here.
Na, kurva okos player, ezt megmondta, hogy most a tutit a faszlámáknak.
Yeah, only makes sense. And this one's interesting right here. Check it out. It says, can you guys confirm if spell intensity is still a thing in Diablo 4? I haven't seen this present in the beta, and people have claimed that it wasn't in the in-game closed beta test either. Has this been scrapped? And we have some responses here from the dev team. Check it out. Yes, this is still in the game. The beta is limited to level 25. There's a ton of additional content, especially at higher world tiers. Your skill intensity is based on your skill points and legendary effects for that skill. The total rank that a skill can get to includes plus 5 points you could spend onto your skill tree before you cap out, plus 6 plus skill points effects, plus 3 skill category effects, and plus 4 from extremely rare redacted. Now, it goes on to confirm modifying the size of a skill can come from many different sources: skill points for certain skills, legendary items, legendary paragon nodes, and glyphs. So you will definitely see a visual enhancement for your skills and abilities as you go. It's not like that's missing from the game. It's just kind of missing from the beta since we are capped at level 25 and we're not getting to experience the full game. Now, furthermore, it says, that's awesome. At what skill level breakpoints do you start to see spell intensities change? Love the beta, by the way. So excited to play it again this weekend. He confirms this: overclocking your skill points and having a few legendaries for the same skill should get you to max. It is a bit gradual as you level, but comparing a max out skill to level 1 is noticeable. The blog examples are in game. Blue flames on sorcerer skills are most obvious. So, sigh of relief that yes, that is still going to be intact for the full version of the game. All right, we've got to talk about inventory. This was a big discussion right here. It says Diablo 4 versus Diablo 3 inventory side by side, and a lot of people prefer the Diablo 3 inventory and even the Diablo 2 inventory, and there's a great
Hát
explanation.
amúgy az a vicc, hogy tényleg jobb az meg a régebbi.
Most likely have changed with Diablo 4. So let's get into it. So first of all, this was posted here. I like the structure of Diablo 2 and Diablo 3's equipment screen so much better. At a glance, you know which items are in which slots.
Amúgy igen, tehát hogy
Whereas in Diablo 4, everything has
nem egy nagy valami, de tényleg
you have to
borzasztó.
look through the image to know what is what. It's like they got no feedback whatsoever in their design process. Do you agree with this one or not? Sound off. Now, Nathan says this, it was an
Tehát, hogy nézd meg ez, bazd meg, nézd. Most nem is az, hogy Diablo 3, de mi ez? Mi ez, bazd meg? Ez azért van, hogy lásd a kibaszott karakteren a hülye mindenféle kinézetet, meg skint, meg a mindenféle ruhának az izéjét, az, hogy nézel ki. Azért van ez a baromság. Ahelyett, hogy úgy lenne, mint hogy minden normális ilyen játékban van az, hogy milyen slotra hova kerül, bazd meg. Ráadásul nem is lehet némelyik itemről megmondani, hogy mi a lófasz az, mert úgy néz ki. Hát jó content, hát a cipő van legalul, aztán a nadrág, aztán a kesztyű, meg hát mint egyértelmű, hát hova fúz már faszomba.
Diablo 3 inventory side by side, and a lot of people prefer the Diablo 3 inventory and even the Diablo 2 inventory, and there's a great explanation as to why things most likely have changed with Diablo 4. So let's get into it. So first of all, this was posted here. I like the structure of Diablo 2 and Diablo 3's equipment screen so much better. At a glance, you know which items are in which slots. Whereas in Diablo 4, everything has equal weight, and you have to look through the image to know what is what. It's like they got no feedback whatsoever in their design process. Do you agree with this one or not? Sound off. Now, Nathan says this, it was an intentional design choice so they could show as much of your character model as possible every time you view your inventory or stats. Remember, the MTX in this game is cosmetic, so the inventory is designed to make you look at your character model.
De erről beszélnek. Erre lehet azt mondani, hogy húzzatok a picsába.
Cosmetic aspect versus the gear aspect. Yeah, there's going to be a ton of unlockables in that battle pass. It's trying to definitely drive you to those cosmetics in the battle pass. I have no doubt. That is
normális játékokban ez úgy van csinálva, hogy itt van az inventory, így néz ki. Van egy gomb itt fölül, hogy átváltod egy cosmetics.
Inventory and even the points allocation or not sound story. Ton of unlockables in that battle pass. It's trying to definitely drive you to those cosmetics in the battle pass. I have no doubt. That is so on point right there. Now, this is a great question. What happened to the attribute points allocation? Did they remove it? Great question. And we got a response here from Foz, who says this.
Az új biztos, hogy jobb
from the base leveling experience, as most would not know what to invest towards when starting. Instead, stat allocation is now found in the
Nem is értem. Tehát azt gondolják, hogy az átlag játékos akkor... Mint hogy valószínűleg az amúgy, de hogy ezzel azt gondolják, hogy az átlagjátékos, az átlagjátékos semmit, te nem tudja, hogy mit csinál.
The world boss, which we'll be encountering in, of course, the open beta. Now, here's where you can find Shiva, of course, if you don't know, if you're kind of like brand new to this, you missed out on early
nem próbáltál, nem is lehetett kipróbálni a druidát. Most lehet kipróbálni a druidát.
Spawning at very specific times. Check it out right here. You can pause the screen if you want to.
Ja, pause the screen. 10 AM PT, van PMET. Oké, várjál, be kell írni a izébe, hogy az most milyen időzóna egyáltalán, hogy át tudjam váltani. A mi időzónánkra nehéz lett volna kiírni úgy egy kóddal, basz meg, hogy mindenkinek a saját időzónájába mutassa az időt.
In the full version of the game, they're going to be doing something different with, I guess you would say, how she spawns in. It's not going to be like this set. Now, it goes on to say this right here. These are great tips. Before the Diablo 4 beta began, Blizzard hinted to fans that there's a way to weaken a Shiva and make her easier to defeat. After lots of testing, players have discovered that you can weaken a Shiva by hitting her with skills that inflict crowd control effects such as slow, chill, daze, stun, freeze, immobilize, taunt, and knockdown. Those are going to be absolutely essential to use against Shiva. Furthermore, it says by damaging her with enough of these, your group will eventually fill up the yellow meter under Shiva's health bar and stagger her, giving you 12 seconds of free uninterrupted damage time. One of Shiva's arm blades will also get shattered, though this doesn't seem to have an effect on her sweep attacks. So the more you know, and that should be extremely helpful as you head into phase.
Ja, most akkor ezután mindenki az összes crowd control skillet fogja használni. Játékosok 99%-a azt se tudja, mi az. Ráadásul egyébként ezt nem is értem. Pont a bossra hat a crowd control. Pont, hogy arra nem kéne hatnia annyira, nem?
Yellow meter under Shiva's health bar and stagger her, giving you 12 seconds of weaken a Shiva and make her easier to defeat. After lots of testing, players have discovered that you can weaken a Shiva by hitting her with skills that inflict crowd control effects such as slow, chill, daze, stun, freeze, immobilize, taunt, and knockdown. Those are going to be absolutely essential to use against Shiva. Furthermore, it says by damaging her with attacks. So the more you know, and that should be extremely helpful as you head into face off Shiva. Now, I did another video which has tons of information, brand new stuff in it. Check it out on the channel. I think some of you actually missed out on this because I kind of released it a little bit late, more so towards the evening hours, but it also answers questions like this right here. It says, will story quest progress be saved for all players? Top comments.
Nézzük a butok kommenteket.
Could end up in a future video. So yes, here it is right here. It says urgent beta news update, devs big response, new drop rate changes, pets, and more. So yeah, it also has some cool information about the potential of seeing pets in, of course, Diablo 4 eventually. Now,
Szerintem igen. Nagyon nagy meglepetés lenne, hogyha nem tudnák betartani a június 6-ot. Inkább azt látom, hogy betartják, de ugyanúgy faj lesz a start. Amint, hogy szerverek be fognak szarni. Sokkal nagy queue time lesz ilyesmi. Szerintem. Hát már tehát, hogy már elég közel van ahhoz, hogy ne nagyon tolgassák ezt el. És eléggé úgy álltak eddig is ez a kérdéshez, hogy akkor lesz. Valami óriási hibának kellene történnie, vagy óriási dolognak kellene történnie, hogy ezt eltolják. Szerintem.
I think if the Nightmare Sigils would have a feature where as long as you hold on to them, there's a chance you could be attacked by a random boss, like the Butcher. Man, that would be so cool if,
de hogy ez a srác, így jó összeszedett ezeket a dolgokat, de szerintem nincs olyan dolog, amire azt mondta, hogy ez hülyeség, vagy ez rossz ötlet. Minden, ami benne van idő, az tök jó, meg nagyon király, meg szuper cool, minden.
Dude, I love this idea. I think it's such a creative idea, and it's something they should definitely consider adding in there. Some sort of, I don't know if you would call it bounty hunting type system. Man, very intriguing idea indeed. But there it is, the latest happenings around Diablo 4, and I cannot wait to hop into the open beta. I'm counting down.
Nem azt mondtam, hogy mondjuk ez nem tetszik, és azt mondom, hogy bármelyik videóban néztünk bármit, mindegyikre olyan volt a hozzáállás, hogy bazzeg, ez de jó ötlet, igen, ez de jó lenne, ez is, de jó. Negatív nem, hogy ne hozna? Nem negatívnak kell lenni, hanem tehát, hogyha valaki kritikusan el tudja mondani a véleményét, az nem az a legkorrektebb, és az a Lehet, hogy megosztja az embereket kicsit, de sokkal jobban értékelem azt a véleményt. Jó, igen, csak a cool dolgokat szedte össze.
And yes, there was an in-game beta that also leaked. Talk about it. Plus, check this out right here. So yeah, I've been running the Diablo 4 beta on a beast of a machine from Zydex PC, and I can safely say this is the best gaming rig I have ever owned.
Best gaming rig.
White as a mouse, but has the power of 5 of our classes. The Paladin, Barbarian, Sorcerer, Amazon, and Druid are planned for launch, with more coming later. It makes you scratch your head because it doesn't match, of course, exactly with
Ja, a Krip konkrétan 6 pontot adott a Diablo 4-re. És elmondta az összes olyan dolgot, amire úgy gondolta, hogy nem jó, és hogy óriási probléma lesz vele később, vagy bármi olyat. Meg azt is elmondtam, hogy jó volt. Tehát ő tényleg ilyen kritikusan állt hozzá, és mondta el a véleményét. Az a sokkal inkább tudtam azonosulni én. Azért, mert 10 éve nem ad ki senki készjátékot, attól még szerintem egy ekkora cégtől én mindig azt mondom, hogy el lehet várni, hogy ne az átlag fizetős játékokat, a fizetős játékot ne az átlag emberekkel béta teszteljék 3 napos hétvégéken, amit nem tudnak szerverekkel támogatni rendesen. Lehet mondani, hogy akkor mit tudom én le van építve az egész, igen, le vannak építve teljesen. Biztos keveset költöttek a Diablo Immortalra, és biztos kevesen vették meg ezt a játékot is előrendelve, biztos az összes játékokat senki nem veszi már régóta. The Amazon is primarily a ranged class, uses of blows, javelins and spears. She's known for her superior agility and evasion abilities, while also being able to use Dark nem kell megvenni, hogy teszted. And this sounds very different from the classes that we currently have. One of the biggest worries with adding in more classes is they start feeling very meg a Dark and Darker fejlesztői csapata konkrétan egy garázs a Blizzardhoz képest. You would be mostly excited for the Paladin or the Amazon. Sound off in the comments down below. Now we gotta also talk about that in-game beta test. Check it out right here. Here's the headline: in-game beta test for Diablo 4 has been leaked. Testers have already leaked information in hours of video. A open beta alatt nem kell fizetni, csak a 3 napos open betából másfél napig nem fogsz tudni játszani, és a closed beta csak az előre megvevő embereknek volt elérhető. Tehát, hogy értem, amit mondasz, csak hiába próbálod ezt úgy előadni, hogy mint hogyha nem tudom, nem lenne igazam, vagy mint hogyha nem jogosan mondanám. Ettől még ugyanúgy fogom érezni, és ugyanígy van. Akárhogy próbáljuk ezt szépíteni. Én még azt is mondanám, hogy jó, legyen 70 euró, legyen 100 euró. Csak akkor várjuk is ezt, tehát legyen az a színvonal, hogy ne basz meg szar. For those that are intimately familiar with Diablo and its in-game, and to really get their feedback about Diablo 4's in-game, which is absolutely critical and kind of actually gives me a little régen hogy tudtak ő játékot csinálni, basz meg? Régen nem volt egy millió ember, aki előre megvette a játékot, meg bétáztak. Hogy voltak akkor azok a játékok, még most is jók állítólag. És játszanak velük azok az emberek is, akik akkor nem játszottak. De hát akkor most hogy van hozzá engedje, hogy játszanak az emberek? Mert játszanak azokkal a játékokkal. Hát újra kiadták ugyanazt a gémet. Ezt megvették egy csomóan. Hogy volt az a játék? Hogy lett ez a játék jó, és ezt meg nem tudják. So it goes on to say this right here. Ahead of their release, PC Games In spoke to Diablo 4's game director Joe Shelley and franchise VP Rod Ferguson. Talán inkább a kiadás kényszerre értek egyet.
shall we? So Ferguson goes on to say this: self-perception.
Amúgy ez is igaz. Ráadásul igen, ez a játék azon alapul, tehát, hogy még csak úgy dolgot se kell nagyon kitalálni. Ráadásul van egy csomó példa más hasonló játékokban, amit át lehet venni. Haló? Tigler, nagyon szépen köszönöm a baszó csírt. Köszi.
As to what you have decided now. It says you can take all that customization around what your army will look like, and you can actually sacrifice them to make you stronger.
Azt most nagyon szívesen. Köszönöm szépen a baszócsírt.
I don't want an army. I want to be a badass blood necromancer or a bone necromancer, and I'm going to
amúgy teljesen igadatok van. Nyilván értem, hogy kell nekik a pénz, marketing, el kell adni még több embernek. Igen. Hát ugye azért is vagyok ilyen. Köszi szépen Siro neked is a basszocsi. Hát, hogy nyilván azért érzem így valószínűleg a Blizzard-dal kapcsolatban, főleg mert játszottam azokkal a játékaikkal, amiket még szívből csináltak. Hazamentek a Blizzard dolgozók, és a szívükkel dolgoztak. Azok a játékok azért voltak jók.
When it comes to the druid, their specialization.
Big Buta Cheese, köszi szépen az ajándékszavot, Billynek, köszi.
Home of the druids, and there are spirit animals that the druid can commune with.
Köszi, hello.
For bringing tokens back as favors. Now, the spirit animals offer customization in the form of different buffs that the druid can get if they choose to be alive. 1 and 4.
De szóval kicsit ezért érzem így amúgy. Nem tudom.
We have gotten to see like the werewolf and the bear, of course, gameplay of that, but apparently there's more. Furthermore, it says there's a heavy thematic component to it, and there's a mechanical differentiation as well, Ferguson notes. And it goes on to say, while you won't get to see Scotchglen in this beta, there's some really cool changes to the druid's signature shape-shifting that we've never seen before in previous iterations.
Never seen before.
Sanctuary. Now that has me very curious.
Értem, Szergej. Alapvetően nem volt baj azzal a bétával olyan szempontból, hogy én is eljátszottam vele. De attól még a véleményem ugyanaz, hogy az alternatívák többet tudnak és jobbak. Valószínűleg még a kész Diablo 4-től is. Tehát, hogy legvégső soron mégiscsak a marketing nyert, de attól a játék szerintem nem lesz annyira jó.
Basically, for every skill you use, you transform into
Igen,
an animal that does it. So if you have a swipe that is a bear attack and a bite that is a wolf attack, you'll smoothly transition between the two forms. And then the itemization.
Abba igazából tudnak, hogy szeretik az átlagemberek szeretik azt, hogy pozitívan van előadva az ilyesmi. Jó lesz, hype-od, de majd egy csomó ember például ezért utálja azokat, akik megmondják, hogy szerintük szar, mert hogy nem ért egyet azzal a véleményével, hogy miért szar, nekem tetszik, miért nem szar, miért szar, miért mondja, hogy szar. Most szar a játék, ami nekem tetszik, akkor most mi lesz? Szóval, a csomóan úgy érzik szerintem, hogy ha valaki azt mondja, hogy szerinte szar, vagy van más játék, ami jobb vagy olyan, akkor egyből már rosszul érzi magát, hogy most akkor ez tényleg szar, most nekem pedig tetszik.
Definitely don't want to accidentally essentially delete one of your more important items in the game. And guess what? It's time for your top comments. Remember, leave a comment down below. It could end up right here in a future video. So what's my most recent video about? A new warning official beta patch and updates. Do this now. So yeah, make sure you update your game.
Csak hát az átlag emberek gondolom nem így vannak nyilván.
And if you don't have it downloaded, you can go download the open beta.
Csábra kijöttől lesz jaj.
Now Joe Sim goes on to say the following: I want to see a deep dungeon like the Tristram Cathedral, where the dungeon could be like 20 floors deep and goes through different biomes, and you can unlock new entrances a la Diablo 1. Hell yes, that sounds absolutely amazing. They can do a lot with that. I think this would be cool as some sort of randomized dungeon. Imagine if each level was randomized and you had to go down a spiral into hell. Now, Zero Cool goes on to say this: I think they are confused by why we don't.
Ja, de és ezzel mi a baj, Ferinc, érted? Amint akit most... Hát itt az én streamemen nyilván én elmondom az én véleményemet, most valakinek ez nem tetszik, amit lehet vitatkozni, meg meggyőzni egymást, érted, de... Nem tudom. Szerintem igen, szerintem olyan, ez a dolog, az a dolog, azt ennyi. Valakit érdekel, akkor...
So I don't know exactly what they could do about that. Hopefully they
érdekel, nem, akkor meg felesleges az zenézni szerintem. Sőt, egyébként, és ilyenkor jött eszembe egyébként új Gab, akivel egy csomót vitatkozok minden ilyenen, és konkrétan nem tudjuk egymást meggyőzni, és a végén mindig azon, hogy új Gab, bassz meg. De utána meg így elengedjük, és szerintem semmi gond nincs, mert neki ez a véleménye, nekem meg az. Big features.
All right, so welcome back to Sanctuary. Yes, we've got some official new updates straight from the Diablo 4 dev team. So who wants to see more expanded butcher type enemies in Diablo 4? Well, the dev team had some very cool teases about that today, as well as how the sorcerer, druid, and other classes will be evolving past the beta cap. And we got a very detailed response about the biggest worries from the beta, which include the lackluster dungeon design and how dungeons will differ in the full game. And later in the video, we'll discuss why couch co-op isn't on PC. But the question is, will it ever come to PC? Also, smack that like button to buff my barbarian. And check out the pinned comments for my PS5, Xbox Series X, and Nintendo Switch giveaway for my subscribers, so check that out. All right, time to get into the details. The new interview with Diablo General Manager Rod Ferguson and Diablo 4's Game Director Joe Shelley. So here is the first question. It says this: one other bit of feedback I saw, and this came from a few people, was they're not being overly enamored with the dungeon design. The gist seemed to be that dungeons were too big and involved backtracking to grab keys and unlock doors and so on. Is this something you've seen?
Tehát azt lehetett mondani, hogy a dungeonök szarok. Az összes. Na jó, lehet, hogy valamelyik nem annyira, de az összes egy szar. Szerintem nekróval. Legalábbis a szarok kezdem.
We have seen it, yeah. There's
we have seen it, yeah. We have seen it, yeah. Azért csináltuk ilyenre, mert láttuk el.
Elements there. There's some players who we added the ability to teleport out of dungeons via the UI, and some players don't realize that.
Mi? Ezt nem is értem ezt a reakciót, bazdmeg. Ez mi ez a szar? Ez nem reakció, bazdmeg, ez egy szar.
Exists, but certainly there are cases within the dungeon where you're going to get a key and then you're going somewhere else.
De hát nem arra gondoltak, hogy nem tudnak kimenni a dungiból, mert vissza kell sétálni az elejére.
Something you've seen.
Nem arra, pont, hogy nem arra gondolt, hanem arra gondolt, hogy el kell menni a jobbra a kulcsért, amit visszaviszel balra, visszamész, elmész balra egy kulcsért, majd visszamész középre, majd előre mész az ajtó, amit kinyitottál, megölsz egy csomó mobot, de meg kell ölni az összes mobot, ott marad hátul két vérszopó, amiért vissza kell menni az elejére, aztán megint tovább tudj menni a kibaszott ajtón. Tehát nem az a problémája itt az embereknek, hogy nem tudnak kijönni a dungiból, mert vissza kell futni az elejére, hanem az a szar a dungi, bassz meg. Tutoriál kell ahhoz, hogy megnyomjanak két gombot az emberek.
You can quickly exit the dungeon if you guys don't know this by opening up the map, going to the entrance location on your map, clicking on it, and then you can actually just instantly transport out of the dungeon. That would have been nice to know at the beginning, so they definitely need a tutorial key for that. Also, we have this right here, but when you think about dungeons overall, there are well over 100 dungeons in the game, and in the beta, of course, you're only seeing,
Ja, tehát hogy a többi dungi az ennél sokkal jobb, ez gyerekek, tehát hogy itt most csak a Fractured Peaks-es dungik vannak, amikor kijön a játék, a többi régióban jók lesznek a dungik.
In the Fractured Peaks region, which is about 20% of the overworld. One of the design decisions we made is we wanted the dungeons, an individual dungeon, to have certain properties about it that were consistent and tied to that dungeon and that place in the world. So that when you go into a dungeon, it's not drawing out of a raffle of all the elements. There are some things that are consistent. And he's talking about, of course, each region looking unique. However, the problem is, from the complaints that I'm seeing, despite the fact that we're in Fractured Peak, although it has a very specific look to it, tone to Fractured Peaks, it's the actual layout that is redundant and the problem, and the backtracking that is the issue. Furthermore, we have this right here, and the way that we want players to approach that as they're leveling up is to look at it as, I want to do each of these different dungeons, and that's incentivized through things like the Codex of Power and the Renown system that give you a sort of checklist for all the dungeons you can do. Then when you get into the in-game, after you've completed the campaign and you get access to the Nightmare Dungeon system, we have the sigils that modify dungeons in really cool ways with buffs and nerfs, and those dramatically modify the dungeon. But because the dungeons are designed with some properties to start with, you can get a sigil for a dungeon and have some context, for what that means. It's not just a random name that can be anything. Okay, I get it. You know, it's going to be cool that the enemies will change up here dependent on the sigil that you get. And of course, it would mutate the boss, I suppose you would say. But again, it would be neat if those sigils would actually change the layout of the dungeon itself. Or randomize in some weird way. They are not giving any indication that the sigil actually does that. So again, they're not really responding as to the exact concern that we have. And Ron Ferguson says,
nem fizet, vagy hát nem tudom. Ja, megvan. Amúgy, hogyha nyomba tartja az E-t az ember, konkrétan ugye az emote wheelbaron is rajta van a dungiból való kiteleportálás. Az egyik legjobb.
Szeretem Blight amúgy. Én nem is akarom bántani, de neki ugye az ARPG tapasztalata az így nem sok van.
Meg kell ölni a Gatekeepert, és összeszedni a kulcsot, hogy tovább tudj menni. Na és figyelj, egyik legjobb boss design az egész bétában. Szarrám erzek közben, igen, azt tudjuk.
Nem, mert Dark Omen End of Life-ban van is rám vár. Na mi van?
Jó, de én meg Mazsálkában vagyok. Na?
Oké, ezt most beszoptam.
Mazsálka. De jó, ez... De... Mi ez? Mi ez az éc?
Mézes csuplokat dobál, vigyázz!
Igen, bazd meg. És akkor van egy olyan skill, ami incinerate, tehát az, hogy channeling, megállsz egy helybe. És belemész a pókhalba, egy helybe állsz, csak mondom.
Az Immortals az jobban nézett ki, mint a Diablo 3. A Diablo 3 az úgy néz ki, mint valami 5000 éves játék.
Hát még a Diablo 3 egy 5000 éves játék azért.
Micsoda?
Azért a Diablo 3 egy 5000 éves játék.
Hát...
Várjál, és akkor majd itt még jönnek az addók, amíg elkezdi spawnoltatni ezt a sok szart.
Nem is látom. De most meg látom.
Megyek bele. Ez a szarfáj.
Bocs, igen viccesen mondtad. Nem akartál kigónyolni.
De szar ez az egész!
Vagy micsoda.
Jó, nyugi. Te! Ki kellett nyomnom, mert nem bírtam.
As this, people are seeing dungeons at the baseline level. It'll be interesting the feedback once people get to experience what it means.
Igen, ez itt egy ilyen sötét dungi.
You get to see now there's more monsters, now they have a different ability, now you're being debuffed this way, and they're being buffed that way, and it's going to feel like a much different experience. Which, again, that sounds neat, but yeah, I want to hear about the actual layout, and I want to hear a solution as to backtracking.
Sorcerer most a Sorcerer a legjobb a Sorcerer.
Non-answer to the problems and concerns that we have from the beta.
Ha azt akarod érezni, hogy erős a karaktered, és te vagy a legjobb a játékban, akkor Sorcerer.
Ranged abilities then is as a barbarian who has to fight up close, and the rogue is somewhere in between. I've had a go at all the classes, and I tend to agree. Oh, and the feedback is coming from people who have somehow taken all three currently available classes to level 25. I wondered if everything is working as intended.
Akkor Wizard, azt. Elnézést kívánok, Norbi, Wizard akkor. Vagy Mage,
right there as we are
Vagy
playing as the
vagy
rogue.
hókuszpók.
All right, this gameplay, by the way, comes from my twin bro, Ryan. So thank you, Ryan, for the gameplay. This is awesome to see. All right, so Joe Shelley says this. Whenever we make changes to the game, it affects the balance. So balance is a continual progression. And in particular, this beta, in addition to the technical aspects
De úgy, tehát egyébként most tudsz, is már játszott Last Apot, és ott is mapozott, és ott nem érzi ezt az ember, mint itt a Dungikba, pedig ott nagyjából egyébként hasonló objektívek vannak, de ott mégse érzi ezt az ember, ott így elszalad a izéig, megölköz a mobokat, pörgős, megcsinál az objektívet, megy a következőre, ott a reward, annak is valamikor kis boss van a végén, vagy valami, de itt meg kiírelt ki az egész Dungit, azt akkor ott maradt az elején két vérszopó kis kultus, démon fight.
It's not just mechanics.
Igen.
It's also the class fantasy. So, if you have, for example, a fantasy of being a rogue, we don't want you to pick rogue because you think that character looks really cool, and then for us to come back and say, oh, no, that's only for people who have 60 hours of Diablo. So, it sounds like they want these characters to be playable no matter what your skill is. Check it out. It says, you're not good enough. We absolutely don't want that to be the case. So again, that's kind of what my theory was in my previous video, was that they were kind of designing the game for all skill ranges.
Van mindenféle videó, de most is sem.
As user
80 gigabit. Nem, mert ez egy ilyen játék. Hát most mi is? Nyugi Zsoki, tovább fogsz várni a Q-ban, mint amennyi ideig letöltöd.
And it's just when you are in a cooperative environment, especially, you don't want some sorcerer just absolutely dominating the entire field when the barbarian is being held back and not doing much. That is just not fun. So
amint Csiro, B2-be azt mondtad, hogy ott így kitalálták, hogy ez van, de azóta már így játszottak olyan, az emberek ilyen játékokkal. Tehát akkor el tudom képzelni, hogy letesztelték, azt mondták, hogy ez átment, jó van, játszottak az emberek, azóta már eltett egy csomó idő. Rájöttek az emberek, hogy ez nem jó, ez egy szar.
Where I shadow dash through an enemy and I blade twist and I try to get the blades to go through as many enemies as possible.
És egyébként ezt még Kripnek a videójában is ő is elmondta, hogy például ez a cleared ki a Dungi teljes összes mobot, az egy szar. Mi nem lehet azt csinálni, hogy cleared ki a 90 akárhány százalékát. És egyébként ő meg mondott rá példát is, hogy ez miért lesz később még rosszabb, mert ha olyan a builded, és jön egy elita abba a Dungiba, amit véletlenül nem tudsz megölni, akkor a Dungi 90%-át mondjuk kiklearelted, van egy rare, amit nem tudsz megölni, azt akkor hát nem tudsz tovább menni, mert ő nem tud megölni az a szomot. Na milyen képe? Szia Pogi! Meg szia Beta fanból.
So yeah, I cannot wait to do that. Hopefully in the open beta period.
És csak nem ilyen Dungik lesznek.
But our overarching goal is that players can embrace the fantasy of it, and then they can lean into the playstyle that they want, or if they want a higher skill gap, they can lean into that. Now, when we talk about playstyle,
ja, de ezt nyugodtan kiléphetsz, mert elvileg a beta előtt újra kell indítani a B-net kliens, tehát nem beszoptad. Vagy hát azok, akik bennülnek a queue-ba, valószínűleg beszopják ugyanúgy. De jó. Tehát, hogy van, aki már azt hitte, hogy most back-volt, az milyen jó lesz neki. Tehát, hogy valakik már most úgy gondolták, hogy sorba állnak. Tehát, hogy kurva jó lesz a Q. Hát rá lehet kattintani a play-re, de hát mivel nem openek a szerverek, szerinted most mi lesz, ott beülsz a Q-ba, és akkor azért anélkül, hogy elindítsd a játékot, anélkül, hogy dizébe lépsz a játékba. Nem mennek a szerverek. Nem fogunk tudni beengedni.
That can actually be extremely powerful when compared to one another. So that's my hope.
Még az előző bétán is újra kell tinteni.
Right now, there's a lot to be desired on that front, at least in my opinion. Now, Rod says this,
nem.
thing that can't be overlooked either.
Én mindenféle szarra játszok amúgy. Mindenféle szarra játszok. Nem játszottam, és hát játszottam az előző részével is, de...
Because the barbarian has the most weapons of any character, and because of that, they have the most equipment slots of any character, which means they could have the most legendary effects. So once you get all legendaries, the barbarian can be super strong because it's got two, legendary.
A Krip videóját meg lehetett volna nézni, de az több mint egy órában fejti ki a véleményét.
You're not going to get legendaries until mainly beyond 25 and above. So they're openly admitting that, yeah, the barbarians are the weaker of the classes, especially at the beginning of a game that might
Szerintem most sem
bother
néz ki
some
rosszul,
people
de semmi
when it
különleges.
comes
Tehát,
to
hogy
leveling
egy
up
játék jól
quickly.
néz ki
Furthermore, it says
2023-ban,
same
az
thing with
így...
sorcerers.
Az
They have
meg
the two enchantment
minden
slots,
második játék
means
jól
you
néz
can
ki,
have
amelyik még nem néz ki jól, mert az egy indie
class.
játék,
For
ami
example, the Druid
aktuálisan még jó is.
specialization happens in Scott's Glen, which won't be in the
A harmadik játék, ami meg
So
vagy
you're
jó
going to
néz ki,
fight
vagy nem néz ki, az meg
25
benne van, hogy
levels
simán
without
szar.
ever being attuned to the animal spirits, which is really important to what the druid feels like. That's wow. For me personally, like considering
Hát
that this is
állítólag le
a
kellett
demo
venni a
and
grafikát
kind of like
médiumra, mert
representation of the
izé.
game, for them to miss such a critical
Mert,
feature of the druid, that's kind of gonna be, I don't know if people will tap into how strange the balancing will feel. Maybe they'll
Mert volt valami memory leak, úgyhogy én médium beállításokon játszottam. Nem tudom, mennyit segített egyébként.
Hey guys, how's it going? Kriparian here.
Vagy
Today,
az elején,
my opinion is based on that.
az elején
In my
elmondja, hogy
opinion, I think the benchmark is Path of Exile, so it is a little bit of a different story. Diablo 3 came out, and Diablo 3, I feel, was one of the most ambitious projects Blizzard has ever taken on. It is a game that hyped me like no other. If you guys remember Jay Wilson talking about how
mesél
their
mindenről
developers
amúgy,
and
szóval
their game
videó nagy
testers
része az.
tried to barely beat
Másfélszer
the game on a
gyorsítás jó
certain
lesz szerintem
difficulty,
is.
and then they doubled it. They doubled the numbers of that difficulty, and that's the difficulty that you could expect in Diablo 3, I mean. And coming from a World of Warcraft raider where balancing was actually pretty spot on in so many raids, and somehow still is to this day, this was such a hype moment. This was so exciting. I know we meme about it. I know it's a very memeable moment, but as someone who had the goal of actually just taking on the game, knowing that there's a goal out there, knowing that there is a nearly impossible challenge ahead, is a really exciting moment. Diablo 3 tried to change everything in significant ways. It tried to change mercenaries in different ways. It tried to change characters in very different ways.
Ja, tényleg, Szikerjó, hogyha neked 3080 van, akkor a Nvidia panelbe vagy a tökönbe le kell limitálni az FPS-t, mert fölrobban a géped.
Everything scaled off of weapons. Everything multiplied everything. They tried to change that in a different way. They tried to revolutionize trading with the real money auction house. Diablo 3 was an incredibly ambitious project. However, I think it released undercooked. A lot of the mechanics weren't fleshed out. A lot of the mechanics were left out of the release of the game. And a lot of these crazy ambitious ideas where they tried to rework and redo an ARPG as people play it, well, a lot of them just didn't really work out. It's hard to say they were bad ideas because at the time I was really, it really piqued my interest. This could be a really interesting thing.
Mi van?
Auction house. I mean,
Normális polyaféle kattintós
I want to see what it's going to come to.
Ezen ne is
So
van
Diablo 2 was a really ambitious
ezek.
project. Almost everything they did didn't work out better than Diablo 2, in my opinion. And one of the worst things in Diablo 3 was the item scaling, where everything multiplied everything. Your weapon damage had like a crazy multiplier, and you had crazy multipliers from crit damage, skill damage, and now we have sets that have like 60,000% increased damage to certain skills. If you have itemization at that level, and you're doing literally quintillion damage, you're going to have problems, and Diablo 3 has always struggled to deal with those problems, because the core of the game was just really hard to work with. Diablo 4. So, you've been watching a few minutes of the video. I'm just going to hit you guys with it. What do I think?
Amúgy, amit itt leír, de még volt egy jó pár dologja. Például volt neki így concernja a HC-vel is, az, hogy az open world miatt ugye grace period sincs, meg hogy a többi player az open world egy részében ugye nyilván behúzhat mobokat, amikor te mondjuk kijössz egy dungiból, ott lehetnek mobok, és emiatt te így insta is halhatsz például, mert ami most így eszembe jutott még.
Diablo 4.
Mondok még egy-két
How
dolgot.
good is Diablo 4? Out of 10, Crypt, tell us. Well, if what we were playing this last weekend is where they currently are with development, more or less, knowing that the game is going to be fully released for console and PC and whatever else in 2.5 months from now, I think the game will launch and be about 6 stars out of 10. That's kind of where I would rate it. Now, with that said, I think it's important to note that a lot of that comes from the fact that I think a lot of mechanics in this game just need a little bit of work, but it needs to be very smart work. Like, there's a lot of mechanics that are really rough, kind of unfinished, I would say, have serious problems, and some of them can be fixed fairly easily, and some require video. Always worst things in Diablo 3 was the item scaling, where video, I'm just going to hit you guys with it. What do I think Diablo 4 is? How good is Diablo 4? Out of 10, Crypt, tell us. Well, if what we were playing this last weekend is where they currently are with development, more or less, knowing that the game is going to be fully released for console and PC and whatever else in 2.5 months from now, I think the game will launch and be about...
Azt mondja, hogy a bétát, a jelenlegi bétát nézve, és az, hogy 2,5 hónap múlva adják ki, mit tudom, PC-re, meg akármire, úgy gondolja, hogy 6/10-zel fog indulni a játék.
6 stars out of 10. That's kind of where I would rate it. Now, with that said, I think it's important to note that a lot of that comes
Ja,
from...
egyébként ebben a videóban elmondja egyébként egy kis, csak azt mondom, mutatom, áttekerem. Igen, egy release score lesz szerintem 6/10 abból, amit eddig látott, meg amit tud. De szóval azt a videó elején elmondja egyébként egy kicsit a backstory-át, mármint hogy ő hogy került így a Diablohoz közelebb, meg stb. Mert azt hiszem, amikor kijött a Diablo 3, akkor úgy felhagyott a munkájával, és full time-ba elkezdte nyomni, stb. Aztán, ja. Azt mondja, hogy szerint egy évvel később. Release után egy év alatt akár lehet 9/10 is.
Like, there's a lot of mechanics that are really rough, kind of unfinished, I would say, have serious problems, and some of them can be fixed fairly easily, and some require quite clever solutions that I don't even have right now. And I think all of that, because the overall system of Diablo 4 is complex, will take some time. And I certainly think it's going to take way more than 2.5 months to get the game to that point where it is a masterpiece. And I do think that in the very positive case, where this development cycle continues on after the game's release, I think like a year from its release, like the third, maybe second season, because it is going to be...
Igen, egyébként azt is elmondja, hogyha minden jól alakul, és továbbfejlesztik, és foglalkoznak vele, és egy év múlva...
launching with seasons, I think it could be like a 9 out of 10, maybe 9.5 out of 10 game. I can kind of understand the goals that the game tries to hit. I can kind of understand where it's coming from, but I don't think it's quite there, and it would really surprise me if it gets there in the time period of 2.5 months. But you know what? Maybe they're way more ahead in development than the beta that we're playing, or maybe they're really going to go ham and knock it out of the park in the coming weeks. But I just wouldn't bet on it, and I want to be straight with you guys. Now, we're going to head into character.
Ő azt is elmondta, hogy benne van az is, hogy megtolják elég keményen, és hogy ezért, stb. Csak mondta, hogy ő nem fogadna erre. Micsoda? Ugye itt egyébként a progressionre kitért, hogy ugye mivel minden scale-el veled, ezért, vagy ezt lehet, hogy nem is ő mondta. De az a lényeg, hogy minél nagyobb szintű a karaktered, itt legalábbis a bétában ez teljesen egyértelmű volt, hogy minél nagyobb szintű a karaktered, annál gyöngébb is a karaktered. Mert ugye minden a szintethez van scale-elve. A mobok is erősebbek lesznek. Tehát itt nem tudod megcsinálni azt, hogy na, farmolod a kis szintű zónát jó itemekért, és akkor úgy mész a nehezebb zónába, és akkor majd ott már könnyebb dolgod lesz, vagy visszamész a még visszább lévő zónába, és akkor ott mindent one-shotolsz.
Highlight. So, I played like 40 hours. The first thing I did is I leveled each of the 3 playable classes to level 25. This is my most successful one, and I want to give you guys this highlight because it will act as something that you can see and understand in practice. How does this game work? How does a character come together? What is happening on the screen? So we'll just load into this dungeon here. This is a dungeon that I kind of like particularly, and I'll show you how my build works, more or less. The build revolves largely around the skill Hydra. It is a skill you will be familiar with if you played Diablo 2 or
nem
Diablo
tudom a
3,
pontos programozását a dolgoknak.
4 heads. The 4th head only spawns if I have nearly full health.
Szédotja.
And to maintain that and a number of other reasons,
nem
I
tudom,
protect
hogy
my life with
scale-áll akkor
barriers.
az egész.
Barriers are kind of like temporary life pools. So I put
Kösz szépen a 33-at.
pretty well. And as you'll notice, they drop rare items, they drop blue items, and the Hydras, they explode when they get hit, and that's because of the sorcerer-specific mechanic where you can turn skills into passives. Now, they're not like skills that are just used passively. They're used in individual ways, and it's a really interesting system, as I'll show you pretty soon. The characters,
ja, de amúgy a Paragonos izéről nem nagyon lehet tudni semmit, ő csak pozitívan áll hozzá, hogy elég mély dolog lesz ez a paragonozás. Ami egyébként lehet tényleg pozitívan hozzáállni, mert úgy néz ki, hogy az lesz.
The rest of the character, it doesn't really make sense to do that. The two Hydras that I'm putting down, well, they really just do enough work.
Yeah, mindenki azt csinálta egyébként, hogy mit tudom én, a Word, azt a Word elite tölte, és mert ugye az nagyobb szintű itemeket dobott.
So, in terms of the character's abilities, which is where we're going to start, we have this form of skill tree. You have to get 2 points in this part of the tree in order to unlock this part of the tree. Then I think it's like 5 points later you unlock this part, then like 3 to 5 points later this part, and so on. It's something like that. There is a Paragon system that unlocks at level 50, apparently. We don't have a lot of details about that, but we'll go into that as we talk about the pros and cons later on. So you have to get a starting skill. The starting skills don't cost any mana, and they're generally fairly weak. I get Firebolt and Arclash. I max out Fireball, and I'll explain in a second why I do that, which unlocks the next set. And I have a lot of defensive abilities, but I don't actually have these spec'd in. You can see rank 1, item contribution 1. That's because my amulet has +1 rank to all conjuration skills and +1 rank to all defensive skills. So you can tell items are really powerful, and they actually shape how you build your character. So you're not going to see a situation where use this build. There's always going to be some variations, at least based on the items that you have acquired. Because, getting all the defensive skills for free, I don't have to put a single point in one of them. I can move on to the next cluster. Now, the later clusters also have some passives. For example, Glass Cannon, you deal 12% increased damage, but you take 6% more damage. That's a pretty basic one. There's a lot of basic ones, but as you go further down the tree, they get a bit more complicated. We max out Hydra. We have rank 8 Hydra. Rank 5 is the most you can put in by just attributing points to the skill tree from levels and whatnot. And you can increase the rank through items. In terms of damage scaling, you are looking at a 10% increase in damage per level, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8. It seems to be 10% every level compounded. And that is not a lot, but it is nevertheless somewhat significant. I actually don't have any of those, but most of my damage is fire, so I have the Pyromancy when you're healthy. It defines healthy as over 80 through the advanced tooltip. Some areas you can only pick one skill. The ultimate ones, you can only pick one skill, so I pick Deep Freeze. Just have a quick look at the skills. So Flame Shield can break crowd control.
Amúgy ez most annyira nem lényeg itt igazából, mármint hogy aki akarja, az is meg tudja találni ezt a részét, de itt ugye a buildet mutatja meg.
See that most aspects of combat are really well done, and they feel very good. The other aspect is character depth. I talked about my character, I showed, all these different things, and there is so much more here than you might realize. And I think it's important for me to go over this in some detail. So there's going to be 5 classes. Each class has its own subset mechanic, which is incredibly complicated. I highlighted a build, but
az borzasztó egyébként, azt is elmondja. Ezt mondtam én is, az fú,
when we have 2 abilities, who knows what the best 2 abilities are? Will I continue using Fireball? I don't know. I might use Firebolt to stack separate burns and to get a lot of free firewalls, in which case I have to put points in firewalls. But again, some people don't realize this is not a skill tree where you just get everything you want. Okay? At level 50, we're going to get something with Paragons, and we'll go into that in a second. It feels to me like the skill tree is going to be very limiting. You're going to want to get everything, but you can't get everything. And that's when it gets interesting. That's when the decisions start to really matter. In terms of the item-based stuff, you can see some items have 3 because they're actually rares that I converted into legendaries. If you find a legendary that... Oh, wow, that's a really good drop. So this legendary that just dropped while I was playing earlier, it has the modifier that I actually have on my chest. On my chest, it's imprinted. Now this one, based on its item level, has a maximum roll. 315 to 630. Okay? That's unbelievable. That's actually kind of lucky. Now, this item, its actual stats on itself, they're not very good. I don't care about thorns. I don't care that much about the 2 resistance. Intelligence.
Ezt meg csak úgy még itt hagyom kérdésre.
Nagyon szépen köszi a basszócsíreket.
I can take that to the occultist and make it into an item. In fact, the one on my pants, I have made into an item. I can then take a piece of gear. Let's say this chest had a terrible ability, but it had really good stats.
Neked is jó
I
gémet,
can then
köszi még
take
egyszer,
that
köszi.
piece and put the ability that I extracted from another
Mindegy,
legendary
egyébként itt
into
elmondja azt, hogy mit tudom én, a weapon aspektek ugye 100% increased effektet kapnak kétkezes fegyveren, és ugye majd a barbár biztos azért lesz kurva erős később akár, mert hogy neki 2 darab kétkezes fegyvere van.
In terms of rares have
De hogy a balansz az nem tudja, hogy fog ez működni. Ez a paragon, amennyit lehet tudni róla.
That stuff there, like these have different colors, so I imagine they do different things. And then they have a different UI here, but the core concepts seem the same. And this. People that I've seen review Diablo 4 talk about how it's a more accessible game than Path of Exile. It's,
Nincsen Q
it's
nálam,
a much easier and more
nincs értelme
approachable game.
Q-olni, elvileg 5-től újra kell indítani a bénetet, így is újság.
And again, this article is from like...
De ha valaki nagyon szeretne Q-bálni, akkor Q-oljon be most.
Maybe this means nothing, but what I see is 3 different UIs of the same concept. And that concept is an incredibly deep and complicated...
Egyébként, meg a múlt hétből kiindulva, én beültem a Q-ba, azt írta, hogy nem is tudom mit írt, hány percet írt. 100 akárhány percet, és addig indítgattam újra, amíg le nem mentem 80 percig. Hát ebből kiindulva még az se számít, hogyha éppen megy a játék, és a queue-ban ülsz, mert én újraindítgattam, és lejjebb ment a queue time-om. Megelőztem cuccot a queue-ba úgy, hogy ő várt végig, én meg újraindítgattam folyamatosan. Tehát, hogy nem is lehet semmit leszűrni ebből. Ja, valószínűleg.
Layer
Tehát
on
szerintem
top
itt
of an already fairly deep and
még hogyha be is tud menni az ember, még az is benne van, hogy crash-el a dolog, úgyhogy... Ő amúgy egyébként itt meg azért csak, hogy ezt itt hagyom a háttérbe, de hogy ja, itt van a bénet. Jó. Mehet alól addig.
Sound resumed.
Most nem lesz sor, azt ígérték. Hát ki ígérte? A Blizzard biztos nem.
Húzi vagy?
Szavasz.
Szavaz. Alig várod már, hogy elkezd a Diablót, látom rajtad.
Mi kajak az ma benn van? Akkor lehet, hogy mégiscsak számított a Q. Na, a Dór is belé. Szerintem ilyen minimális x-ek voltak csak.
Két órás Q. Figyelj, Konti, addig mehetek is lol, nem?